All right, here we go. It is a brand new Flyers Daily for the 20th of December, 2024. Flyers Daily, as always, presented by Ticketmaster. Make more memories live. Frustration continues for the Flyers as they fall by a final score of 7-3 against the Los Angeles Kings. 6-4 loss against Detroit, 13 goals allowed, a couple of empty netters in there, one in the Detroit game, two in the Kings game. But very frustrating finishes, to be sure, for the Flyers. And we're going to talk about that frustration and this kind of up and down element of this season after we recap the game. Shots in the game, 27-26 in favor of the Kings. Not high shot volume on either side in this one when you consider that there was a combined 10 goals, all scored at even strength, no less. 10 total goals, all at 5-on-5. Kevin Fiala opened the scoring to make it 1-0 for Los Angeles. 10:53 into the first, gets in on the breakaway and is able to beat Alexei Kolosov. Flyers get it tied when Noah Cates picks up his fourth. Just good work going hard to the net after he's part of a play to start the play in transition in the neutral zone just inside the Flyer blue line. And Bobby Brink makes a really good play along the wall. He is got a 50-50 battle with an LA Kings player. He wins the race to the puck and kind of outmaneuvers the Kings defender. And with another King coming crashing down on him, makes a really nice little sauce pass across to Noah Cates, who ends up beating the Kings netminder, and the Flyers get it tied at 1. Then 1:31 into the second. You're going, what is this second period going to be like? Flyers have struggled in the second periods all season so far. And just 1:31 in, they go down 2-1 when Tanner Jeannot picks up the goal. And you're going, geez, these second periods are just such a massive issue. Where's the disconnect in the second period? But they come back and they answer. At 11:30, Scott Lawton, good persistent play. Tyson Forster gets the goal to make it 2-2 at 11:30. Then Tyson Forster picks up his second of the game at just after a power play had ended. So there was kind of a bizarre line combination out there. But Morgan Frost, this is what we need to see more of Morgan Frost. The patience behind the net, not to just jam it in front of the net because a Flyer player was there in Tyson Forster. Wait for the play to fully develop. And as the Kings defender leaves Tyson Forster in front of the net, because eventually they got to go to Morgan Frost behind the net, who's with patience and weighing his options. When the Kings player leaves, another player does not come over and cover Tyson Forster, take his hands and his stick away. Frost makes a really nice feather pass to Forster, who bangs it in for the goal. Frost and Tippett with the assist, and it's now a 3-2 game. The Flyers are leading 15:04 into the second period. So this is late in the second period in a back-to-back. You're going, okay, in a good situation now, keep pushing. But a bad goal at 19:16 of the third period when Anze Kopitar, it's a draw in the Flyers zone on the left side. The Kings win it. Kopitar eventually pushes it back to his point man, and shot comes down, and Alexei Kolosov goes to cover the puck. But the move to cover the puck, two things, maybe was ill-fated because maybe the puck was too far away, or it was just too casual by Kolosov in the effort to go cover the puck. Because in the NHL, you can't be casual. It's just like it is for every player when you get to that league. And I never played in that league, never even close. But as you level up, everything happens faster. And he doesn't get the puck covered. Kopitar is able to walk it along the goal line and into the net. And now it's 3-3. And that's a huge goal. And you go into the third period, Kings are feeling good. They've been resting. They've been in Philadelphia while the Flyers were playing in Detroit and finally got home late the night before. And the Kings came out and dominated the third period. That scored the Flyers 4-0. Two of them were empty netters. Flyers only had 2 shots on goal. They got outshot 8-2. Fogle picked up the goal to put the Kings up 4-3. Ends up being the game winner. Then Kopitar again coming down the left side is able to beat Kolosov and a couple empty netters. And boom, there's your game. 7-3 final as the Flyers fall against the Los Angeles Kings. And they did look like a team that ran out of gas. But sometimes you exacerbate the running out of gas because of the goal you gave up and when you gave it up. Final minute of a period is a brutal time to give up that goal and that kind of goal. You need to part of the The job description for a goalie is simple. It really is. You got to make all the saves you're supposed to make and a few that you're not supposed to make. Maybe that's unfair. I don't care. I mean, I played the position. You take that on. That's part of the deal. And when you give up one that you should make and you give it up in the final period to tie a game, that's a tough one. Now, Kolosov will have to learn from it, that you can't ever be casual on those pucks, that things are going to happen faster. Guys in this league are going to get a stick in there and prevent you from covering that unless you go in there with all hell abandoned to get that puck covered. He didn't, and it cost them tonight, and they end up with a loss. I'm not saying the loss is because of that goal, but that's a big one at a bad time, and those things can't happen. And look, this is part of the deal, I guess, when you're developing guys at the NHL level. It's why I always kind of snap back at people that say, well, I mean, if you want the guy to develop, just play him, play the kids. Well, sometimes playing the kids, then you can't complain about the mistakes. It's not a forgiving league to play in. And you see that. And there's been games where Kolosov has looked great and played well and been a huge reason why they got to win. On occasions like this, you look at it and you go, can't give up a goal like that in that spot. But that's part of that process. It's going to be part of it. And it's incredibly, incredibly frustrating. To like living this season has been very frustrating. Now, why do I say that? Because you see glimpses of good play and stretches of good play, and you start to go, okay, we're starting to see some really good things here. They still need more. Yeah, they need a center. Yeah, they need this or they need that. But we're seeing some really good things. And you have these stretches that are good, like when the Flyers on November 7th beat Tampa in the shootout, lost to Florida in the shootout, beat San Jose in the shootout, won an overtime game against Ottawa, and beat Buffalo 5-2. That game, that 4 wins, 4-0-1 in that 5 games, you're feeling really good. And you lose 2 straight. You lose to Colorado and Carolina, and you go, I understand that. They're good teams. And then you go on and you go again, you win, you go 3-0-1 or 4-0-1 in your next 5 games and go, okay, we're back on top of it again. They beat the Rangers in there. They beat St. Louis in overtime on the road. They lost to Vegas in a shootout. You beat Chicago. You were supposed to beat Chicago. You beat Nashville in overtime. You're supposed, okay, so you feel good again. But then after that, you have 3 losses. You lose to Florida. You lose to Boston in overtime, and you lose to Utah. Okay, then you win 2 straight. You beat Columbus and you beat Detroit, who were inferior teams in the standings, but then you lose 3 straight. To Minnesota 4-1, to Detroit 2 nights ago 6-4, and to Los Angeles last night 7-3. And you're going, I feel like I'm just taking steps forward and taking steps backwards. It's just this yo-yoing effect that you feel like you're going nowhere. And maybe that's part of this stage of a rebuild. Look, it's not a traditional, like old school rebuild that they used to do, to tear it down, build it back up rebuild, which we're seeing a lot of teams in a 32-team league in the salary cap era have a really hard time with. Teams like Buffalo, teams maybe Ottawa's finally turning the corner. We'll see. And you see it around the league. You see a team like the Kings, who won a cup in 2012 and won a cup in 2014, and they have very minimal pieces left from those teams. Kopitar and Doughty are the only 2, but they were able to not tear it down, but keep kind of putting players in place and bringing in the right moves and making the right deals to stay up there. And they're a good team. They've been sustainable. They had some years they're down a little bit, but they didn't bottom out and allow the stink of being a bottom feeder enter into their team. So this is it's been a very frustrating season. It's felt really promising at points, but right now, after 3 losses to Minnesota, Detroit, and the Kings, it doesn't feel that way. And I don't feel that way. I don't know. I've talked a lot about it. I don't know where anything's going with this team. I feel like I have no gauge on what direction they're going and how they're going there and who's going to lead them there. There's been some good things this season, and there's been some frustrating things this season. Travis Konechny hasn't done a whole heck of a lot in the last couple of games. The line that's carried the team offensively has been the Cates, Forster, and Brink line, which I would have at one point would have said that's probably not going to be the line that's going to carry you offensively. But they have. Obviously, Cam York was a healthy scratch in the game last night, his play has been really uneven since coming back from the injury. Emil Andre came back in and didn't quite look like vintage Emil Andre when he was in prior to being out of the lineup for a while. And when you see these games and these results, they exacerbate that feeling of what direction are they going in as a collective, as a team, and what direction are certain players trending in their development. So it's it's just this up and down effect of you just don't feel like you can ever catch your breath with which way they're going. And it's hard. In this stage of a rebuild, it's hard to maintain faith at times and keep the faith. It's a difficult thing to do. I mean, they're under Hockey 500 at this point as well. The standings are tight. You see how tight the murky middle is in the NHL. You look at the bottom 4 teams in the Atlantic. So the 5th place team in the Atlantic is the Ottawa Senators with 34 points. The bottom 5 teams in the Metro are within 3 points of that. Pittsburgh's got 33, the Flyers 32, Rangers 31, Columbus 31, the Islanders 31. All of these teams are in the murky middle. Now, why are they in the murky middle? Well, that's because we're now in a 32-team NHL, still coming out of a pandemic in the sense that the cap has not gone up year to year to year like it has in the past, and talent's more spread out. There was an article a guy sent me on Twitter, Tommy Tsunami, alerted me to this article that was at Sportsnet that was written by Justin Bourne on December 18th. And the title of the article says, why NHL teams should reconsider teardown rebuilds and prioritize winning. As everybody knows, that is always my mindset. I am not a tear it down, never accept losing, because you can't wash the stink of losing in pro sports off so easily. And we see these teams that have gone these full tear it down rebuilds, whether it's Detroit, who didn't get lottery luck and pick at the very top, although they got some good players. You look at Buffalo, who picked 10 straight years in the top 10, including the first round pick twice and the second overall pick twice. They've missed the playoffs 13 straight years, and they will miss again this year. You know, you think of a team like LA that retooled, or New Jersey that retooled. Now, New Jersey did get a number 1 overall pick in Jack Hughes, but they also made some savvy moves, adding Dougie Hamilton. They had Nico Hischier, number 1 overall as well. You look at, he brings up a team like the Montreal Canadiens that are going to need somewhere between a lot and all of their prospects to hit to get to become a competitive team before, you know, unless they change course in the way they're rebuilding by adding veteran players that can still play. He also talks about the NHL and the additional players, because it's a 32-team league. There's 50 more players in the league with each team that's added, roughly. He said the additional players have watered down the product to a small degree, which has made for a bigger, mushy middle of the standings, which, as I just showed, we're talking about that mushy middle. It's felt like the league has had about 5 to 6 very good teams each year and 5 to 6 lousy ones, and then about 20 damn near interchangeable rosters, the murky middle. That's not meant as a criticism, but as an observation that incremental positive changes to your roster can go a long way to climbing above the pack. You look at a team like the Washington Capitals. I thought that minus 23 or 37 last year in goal differential made the playoffs. They wouldn't even be a playoff team this year. They made some good moves in the offseason, and now all of a sudden they're one of the top teams in the league. So, and he also goes on to say, instead of blowing it up and trying to get high draft picks, some of those teams tried to get more good players. What a concept. A move that some scoffed at as being in denial. You look at the Caps. They had Jacob Tricken. They had Matthew Roy. They traded for Pierre-Luc Dubois and Andrew Mangiapane. With more good players throughout their lineup, the young players have now been insulated, and that meant they could take bigger strides. Guys like Connor McMichael or Alexei Protas. That's how the best way to develop players is to put them in a situation where it's doesn't overwhelm them, not a just play the kids and throw them into the most unforgiving hockey they'll ever play anywhere in the world, but let them work their way in, being insulated so they develop properly when they do get to the NHL. So I mean, you look at the St. Louis Blues. They won a cup a few years ago. They could have said, well, we'll tear it down, rebuild, Shen's old, and blah, 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 all that stuff. But what they did this offseason, they went out and offer sheeted 2 guys and weaponized their cap space and went out and got 2 guys that they thought could help them. And Cam Fowler. So the notion of just play the kids and tear it down to rebuild isn't, to me, one of those things that I think is prudent right now. Now, one last thing in that regard. We're going to have Keith Jones on next week. I'm taping him on Saturday before the Flyers play Columbus. And one of the things that I'm seeing quite a bit out there, and I saw this guy tweet it out, and I just wanted to bring it up, is this notion. His name is Pat Makes Art on Twitter. He says, why does everybody want the Flyers to make a move so badly? I don't think the right move for them is out there at the moment. I don't think there's been one all season. I feel like this is Briere can't close narrative came out of nowhere. Look, when there's a shiny piece out there, I get it. Like everybody goes, whether it was Juracek that was out there or other players that Trouba, some people said the Flyers should trade for Trouba. I think that's about as dumb as it gets, but that's just me. If you're going to make those franchise-altering moves to help you long-term, they're not likely to happen in a trade deadline. So while there's shiny things out there, and there may be opportunity, I'm not saying there never is that opportunity in season. It's really not the time. The time to start those conversations is now. But I know Keith Jones is on the record, and we'll talk to him about this on Saturday. And you guys will hear it next week of saying, we know where we are in this rebuild. We're going to be sellers. Now, do I think Keith Jones is being a little coy there? I do. If there's an opportunity, then to get what you need long-term, then yeah, you probably grab it. But you got to see if that opportunity presents itself. You can't force that opportunity. I'm not one of those people that believes you just make a trade just to make a trade for the bloodthirst of the fan base. That's not going to do you good in the long run. So while this season has been those chunks of feeling good and positive and feeling negative like we do right now after these 3 losses, this is where you have to remove your emotion as best you can. And unfortunately, and this is hard to ask for, have more patience. You don't want to force something just to do it, just to do something. That doesn't help you. So just wanted to get that off my chest. All right, we'll be back Monday. Bill Meltzer will join us. We'll talk about the Flyers-Columbus game. Flyers on Monday will be in action on the road against a suddenly surging Pittsburgh Penguins team who's a point ahead of the Flyers. Didn't see that coming. So we'll talk about all that and more on Monday. So join us then on a brand new Flyers Daily.